Hello there and welcome back. In the previous episode, we created these two scripts that help us move the player. So now we can walk around, we can jump, we can look around, and that's cool. Later on, we're going to add more functionalities to this script, so we are going to be able to do even more things. But right now we're just walking in this white area and we need to create some kind of environment for the game. So in your case, this may be a different environment. Maybe you want your survival game to be in some kind of cave or house, but most of these survival games happen in the wild, right? They happen in forests or things like that because we need to survive against nature or against other things. So today I'm going to show you how we can create some kind of landscape. Even if you're not going to use it, it's really good for you to actually learn all of these tools, because if you are going to add them later on in your game, it's good to know that you have these options, okay? So I'm going to show you how we can change this terrain to actually look like some kind of environment. So I provided a few links inside the description area. We have this terrain tools sample asset pack, which is something that comes for free, of course, and you're going to get all kinds of different brushes for your terrain. So you have a few basic brushes that come with Unity, but here you're going to get even more brushes, and you're going to get a few textures for the ground. So I really recommend it, and it's for free, so why not? Then there's a link for this fantasy landscape. So that's a fantasy art styled landscape that has trees, it has grass meshes, it has terrains. So I'm going to use this one in our game, but again, you can use whatever you want. I also added other links in the description for more realistic assets, so you can use them or you can use whatever you want. And I also provided this fantasy skybox. So we're going to use these skies for our game. So they have many different kinds. They have for different times in the day, night, and they look very good, especially for a fantasy game or something more cartoon-like. Okay? So after we downloaded all of these packs, we can do that from the browser or from the asset store in Unity itself, right? We have these packages over here, so we can see Fantasy Skybox, Fantasy Environments, and the sample pack just integrates with Unity, and we're going to be able to use all of these tools. So the first thing we want to do is actually change the texture of this terrain. So to do that, we simply click on the terrain, and here we go to this paintbrush, and we are going to add another texture. So to do that, we simply click here on Edit Terrain Layers and Add Layer. So we're going to see different kinds of textures that we have in our project. I'm going to select this one, Terrain Grass. It comes in the Fantasy Skybox. So we have also a few textures for the ground in the Skybox package. So it's good. I'm going to click on this one, and it will automatically apply it to this entire terrain. Okay, so now we can see that we have this. Let's just start the game. We have this nice, cool terrain. Okay, so it's very easy. But what if we want to add more textures to this terrain? What if we want to have like a different rocky area, or we want to draw some kind of path over here? So all we need to do again is go to our terrain and click here again edit terrain layers, and we're simply going to add another layer. So I'm going to use, let's see, this one, this layer ground road CD. I'm going to click on it, and now it won't apply it on the entire terrain, it will just add it here. So now we can use it like a paint for our paintbrush. So we simply select it, and we also have the option to change all kinds of settings for it. For example, the tiling. So if the resolution is stretched out or something, we can change it, but I think it's good. So now that we selected this terrain, we can simply change the brush for it. So we have different brushes, and we can see we have also the other brushes that came with the package that I provided. So let's select maybe this one, and we're going to change the size and the opacity. So the opacity is the strength of the brush, but I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to make the brush about this size. The opacity, well, it doesn't really matter because it's just for this texture, so we're not going to sculpt or something. So now I simply click and drag and paint this texture, okay? So now we can create some kind of road that will lead us to maybe a town or some kind of point of interest. I don't know. And we can keep doing it and adding more layers and more textures and painting whatever we want. So if we play, you can see that we have this nice texture over here, and it's pretty cool. The resolution is very nice, and it also goes nice with this grass. So that's the way we apply these textures on the terrain. The next thing we want to do is actually sculpt this terrain, because we don't want a flat, boring terrain. We want to create some kind of elevation. We want hills, we want mountains, we want to change it, right? So to do that, we simply select the terrain and we go to, again, this paint brush, and here we select raise or lower terrain. So we're going to be able to select a different brush again, and after we selected our brush, for example, maybe this one, we need to change the size. Let's do 200, and the opacity, and then we click wherever we want, and we simply drag, and it will elevate the terrain and make some kind of mountain. Okay, so you can use different brushes to get different patterns. You can change the opacity so it will be more rigid or more smooth, and you can play with that and sculpt your terrain. So again, I still don't know the way it will all look, but I can create different little mountains here. Just like that. A little bit here, a bit there. So like I want a valley and then mountains around it. And this one here. So now it looks weird because it's like there's some gap here, but it's not the entire world of our game. Eventually we can click on the terrain and we can make it bigger by going here into this setting icon, and we can increase the size of the terrain. But the thing that I recommend is actually clicking here and creating another neighbor terrain. So we can create as many terrains as we want and make them all combined, and then we're going to expand our world. But right now we're focusing on this world, on this terrain. So let's go back here, raise or lower. Let's play with that. Again, you need to spend time building your own world, and if you think that coding takes a lot of time, then art takes even longer, and that's the harder thing in creating a game. Because in big studios, usually they have a department that focuses on art and a department that focuses on coding. So these are different people with different skills that do all of this. But we are going to spend a lot of hours just messing around with art and with designing our environment or things like that. Even if we don't actually create these models, we still need to spend time placing them and sculpting this area. So I'm going to spend some time doing that later when I'm not recording, and you're going to do the same thing. You can also press Shift and then click, and it will just lower the terrain so you can cancel everything you did. Right, let's just do it like that. Or for example, here we can create some kind of elevation. No, that's too big. Kind of elevation. And then we can just lower it so there will be some kind of maybe little lake or pond over here. Again, I don't know, but maybe, right? Maybe some river. We're going to figure that out later on. But for now, I'm not going to spend too much time doing these things because it's really up to you in your own game. And the point of this series is just to give you the tools. So now if we play, you can see that we have this huge mountain here and these weird mountains here that go to the end of the world. But we're actually starting to see some kind of environment. And if I go here, of course, I will fall from the terrain. No. Okay. So now we have this nice area. Let's just go back here. Let's get rid of this so it will be all flat and good. That. That. Again, I'm going to mess with that later. So now that we saw that we can raise and lower the terrain, we can paint all kinds of textures on it. We can also add trees and flowers and grass and all kinds of details. And to do that, we have these two buttons here. So this one is for trees and this one is for all the other details. So the first thing we want to do is add some grass meshes. So I'm going to click here and we need to do the same thing like we did with the textures. We're going to go here to edit details and we need to add a texture or a mesh. So I'm going to add a mesh and we have some meshes of grass that comes with this fantasy package. And the good thing is that all of these things that come together are usually of the same style of art, so they will fit together in the scene. Sometimes we can't find it here. Then we can just go to the actual folder and find it. Okay, so we have it here, the grass. So I'm going to drag it inside this window. And before we mess with the settings, we need to click on add and it will add this mesh over here. So now that we have this selected, we can select the brush again. Okay, brush size, opacity, let's just put it on 1. Target strength 0.5, and then we click and it should appear here. Okay, so because the draw distance is set low, so if we're zoomed out, we're not going to see it. But if we zoom in, we're actually going to see all of this grass. So we need to remember that sometimes it's not visible, although it's there. That, like that. I'm not an artist, far from it. I'm just going to do something very simple to show you that we can use it without any problems. And don't worry if you like overlap this path. So you don't need to be very careful. You can just draw everything the way you want, because if you want to delete this section, you are going to decrease the size of the paintbrush. You still need to select this mesh, and then you're simply going to click on Shift, and it will just erase everything. So that's a good way to clean all these things that go over this path. And then we can fill it here. So again, it takes time to actually make it look good, and I'm not going to waste your time on that. Okay, so now we have this. Let's just add some grass here. Of course, I'm not going to do that all over this huge terrain right now. I'm going to do that later as we actually continue and walk inside and explore. But now that everything is set here, we can play. And we can see that we have this great, nice grass here. It is also animated, so you can see it actually moves with the wind. So that's a cool feature of this terrain system. And you can also see that there is a difference in colors. There's like more dry areas and there's more green areas, and you can also change all of that. So you simply select the grass mesh, and then you have two different colors, so it goes between both of them. So for example, you want your dry area not to be that dry, you simply change it to a different green, okay? Or even like that. Let's do it something like that. So there will be some kind of difference in variety and color, right? And you can also change all the sizes of the mesh. You can change the width. You see you have the minimum and the maximum, because not all of these meshes are created equal. Some of them are created in a different shape, so it goes between these two values and it creates a different height. Otherwise, all of the meshes would look exactly the same and it would give like a very linear and boring effect. So it creates different kinds of meshes with these values, okay? So now that we have all of this applied, I'm not going to waste my time on this. Later on, I'm going to change the size of the grass, because maybe you don't want this exact size. Maybe you want to make it smaller, bigger. You can see also that the wind is pulling them. So maybe it's not for you. Again, maybe you want to use a different kind of mesh. It's totally up to you. So now that we have this here, I also want to show you another thing. If we go to terrain and we go into the settings, we can actually change the wind settings. So we can change the way the wind affects these meshes. So if you think that this wind is too strong, you can just decrease the speed 0.1 and maybe the size 0.2. Okay, so let's play, let's see the difference. Now you can see now it doesn't really drag them too much. So it's pretty cool, okay? And we can do the same thing with these meshes. We can add more meshes to actually put into our scene. So here we need to click on Edit Details, another mesh, and we can add these purple flowers. And it will paint these flowers all over. We're seeing all of these flowers over here, and it starts to look good. Again, we can also change the size of these flowers. We can go here and change the max width, and you can see now they're smaller and they're like a part of this field. So again, you need to spend time and do all of this to make it look the way you want. Okay, then we can also keep doing it, and we can add even more flowers like this white one. Okay. So I don't know if it looks good, but you have all of these options, okay? And I think these flowers are pretty huge, so we're going to make them smaller. But that's the way you can actually add all kinds of details with these meshes. So the next thing we want to do is add trees, right? So it's pretty simple. It's almost the same way. You go to this tab here, the paint trees, and you need to edit trees and select a tree. So you're not going to see that here, but you're going to see, if you're not seeing it here as well, you simply need to go into the package and find the trees. So we have different types of trees here. I'm going to select this one, the birch tree. I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to click on add. So now I have this tree here. So I'm going to click on that, brush size, tree density. I'm going to decrease it to about 10 maybe. And I'm just going to paint it all over the place. And again, if by accident you have one on the path, you press shift and you remove it. And we're going to do the same thing with other trees, so there will be some kind of variety. Actually, don't need this big of a size. Okay, and we can do that. We have a few more nice trees over there. So if we run the game, and now we can see that we have all of these trees, and it's really nice, right? We have different kinds, but the problem is that if you just want to paint trees on your environment and you just want them to be in the scene, but you don't really want to interact with them, that's a very good method, right? You simply paint them all over the place. You can also use this thing here, which is mass place trees, so it will simply place them all over the place. You specify the amount of trees and it will just place them all over the terrain. So it's very easy and it's very fast. But what if we do want to interact with these trees? What if we want to be able to cut them down, like usually happens in these survival games, right? Usually we can chop them down and then get resources and then craft things. So if you want to interact with these trees and chop them down, you can't add them using this method because it won't work. These are all a part of this terrain, and you can't really differentiate between each and every one of them because they're all part of this one terrain. So if you want to add a script on them to say take damage or disappear and give me resources, you can't do it because there's no way to actually find this tree or this tree or this tree. It's all part of the terrain. These are just meshes that we draw. So if you want to do that, we need to find another solution. So I'm going to delete all of these trees because we want to chop down trees. That's one of the best things in these games. So to do that, we're simply going to go inside our package here, and we're going to find these prefabs, these same exact trees, and we're going to drag them inside the scene. That's it. We're going to take another one, and 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 we're going to play, and we're going to see the same exact trees, right? But this time, every tree is a game object inside our scene, and we can actually go to it. We can move it, we can attach scripts to it, so if we want to destroy it later on, we can do it, and that's the way we're going to deal with trees. I mean, maybe you want some trees to be just part of the environment and you want specific trees to be interactable. That's fine. You can just set specific trees to be in the scene and others to be part of the terrain. But I want all of them to be interactable, so I'm not going to use these trees here. I can also remove it from the terrain and only use these ones. So we're going to create scripts to actually interact with these trees, and we're going to add these scripts to these prefabs. And you can see we have different kinds. We can also have these big ones that will grow maybe in other places, and they will give us other resources. Maybe we need better tools to chop them down, so we can play with that. And again, it depends on your game. Maybe you're not going to have this feature in your game. That's up to you. So that's pretty much all I wanted to show you, because before we started this episode, everything was white. There was no soul to the place, but now we actually have this very simple yet somehow beautiful scene, right? It's very simple. Imagine if we had like a lake here, and then we had more details on these mountains, and we had some little rabbits running around here. So it's really cool. And again, I'm not an artist, and you don't have to be an artist. We are game developers. We want to be game developers, but we are not necessarily artists. There are people that have that skill, and we have other skills, and maybe we have both skills, and that's good. But if you want to create beautiful games, you can use help. Maybe you have a friend that has a more artistic mind. You can tell him, sit here and make me a beautiful landscape, and just teach him this very simple tool, and he will just create a beautiful landscape. And that's fine, right? We don't have to do everything by ourselves. But if you do want to do everything by yourself, then it's pretty easy because we have these tools. And again, these flowers, it's not a realistic game, but I just want to make these white flowers smaller, so it's very easy. We go here, we select the flower, and we make it smaller. Okay, apply, and now we can see that these flowers are way smaller, and it's cool. Again, we're going to add more things into our scene. We can actually add post-processing and all kinds of other effects that will make the scene look better, but we're going to deal with that later on. We can add some fog so that when we play, we can see like fog in the distance and we don't see this draw that happens all of the time. And another thing I forgot to do is actually use this Fantasy Skybox package. So to do that, we're going to add this lightning window. We go to rendering, lightning settings, and here in the Skybox material, we simply need to select one of these skies that come with this package. So we have different times of day, we have clouds, we have sunny days. I'm going to select something very happy, like that. Have sunless, and double click on it, and now it will be a part of our scene. And again, here we can change all kinds of things that are related to the lights, but we're going to deal with that later. And we have the fog here, we can enable it, we can disable it. So now when we play, we actually have this beautiful sky. Again, it looks weird because we don't have the rest of our world over here. But if we just look at this part here, right, it looks beautiful. So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. In the next episode, we're going to start to add things to do in our game. We're going to look how we can actually implement all kinds of survival systems and the way we can gather resources and craft. But before we get to that, we also need to just be able to pick up things and have an inventory. So we're going to get there, but that's a very big step towards it because we actually need to have some kind of environment to walk around in. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you still did not subscribe. It will help you keep track of these episodes and every new episode that comes out. It will also help me a lot. And see you next time.